And then my paternal is going to be E-L29. We're going to talk about that.
So this is where I take issue with people that say like they just stick with the J1 concept. Because I'll debate anybody on it. Like I can make an equal argument for J1, R1B, and E all day. I can make an equal argument for all three of them. They got to get ruled out of this juncture.
It's interesting. I heard something third hand. I didn't see it directly, but again, third hand, emphasis on third hand. So I could be wrong here, but I heard that Dante's haplogroup is E1B1B.
Yes, sir.
That's interesting because that
I would be the second hand on that, putting that out everywhere at this juncture, because I keep trying to tell people that's a kill shot for people that keep trying to make this J1 argument and whatnot. Go ahead.
Well, E1B1B has a very strong case as well. I don't think J is plausible. I think J is, because J is found so widespread amongst. Now, this doesn't prove that J is Jacob's haplogroup, but it is interesting how widespread it is amongst different Semitic groups. But the thing is, once you go down that road, E1B1B is also like everywhere as well. It's amongst everything from Semitic Ethiopians. I mean, by Semitic, I mean Ethiopians who speak Semitic languages, Arabs, even Ashkenazi Jews. For it to be that widespread, it seems to imply that it's been amongst Semitic populations since antiquity. And so that's fascinating, because
even the Cochin Jews have the E1B1B.
Fascinating. And so what that says is, I know Dante is also disappointed with me, so I'll give him something that he, I hope this will give him a reason to smile. I think if that's his haplogroup, that makes me sit back and say, the possibility that he descends paternally from Jacob is decent now, without disrespecting anybody else, but I'm saying like that it
Right.
feels like the stakes go up, in that regard.
Yeah.
Like a person has even less grounds to be like, oh, I know Dante's not an Israelite. I know Dante doesn't descend paternally from Jacob. It seems like you have, there was no grounds to begin with. But if that's true, that it's E1B1B, it's like, man, that's interesting. That it feels like the likelihood of him descending from Jacob at least got a little bit better, or descending from some Semitic population got better,
Yeah, it
higher.
definitely slows down the conversation. And so, like, and this is something I'm glad, like, people like Ngozi are coming out and talking about this too, more so. Is that West Africans are mixed in terms of their haplogroups and whatnot, and so a lot of people seem to think that most West Africans are just E1B1A, and that's not the case. Like, so me and my crew, Anonymous is EM180. Again, it's I think it drops off from EM96, etc. whatnot. Like Yukonot's R1B. I'm E1A. My joint goes back 56,000 years and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Again, Dante's E1B1B, and not just any E1B1B. He's a subsection of EM34, which is like the Natufian marker and whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Not only that, so with regards to Dante, you talked about this in a couple of shows about this idea of East Africans winding up in West Africa. Someone like Dante Fortson to have E1B1B, if he has that, I think, like, if we had to guess, like, just, obviously I can't prove anything, but if you said, well, try to guess someone who might be an example of someone who descends from an East African, population that traversed across Africa and wound up in West Africa, Dante Fortson might be an example of that.
You betcha.
Yeah.
So we will be doing a show about DNA, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, he and I. Where we talk just about that particular thing, because when I looked at his DNA, particularly his 23andMe, he has very little European DNA, and particularly very little European DNA from the areas that would have the E1B1B. And this particular, and again, this particular kind of E1B1B, there's a bunch of different clades. He has a very particular subclade, which is heavy in Arabia and East Africa.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not confident that R goes back to Jacob. I'd be very doubtful, Like if someone put a gun to my head and said I had to bet, I'm going with, I'm skeptical about any of them. I'm reluctant to pick any of them. But if someone said, you gotta, like you said, bet your rent money, I would go with J or E1B1B. I'm not betting on R. I'm not dropping my rent money on R.
If I had to bet my rent money on just one of, if you had to pick one, what would it be?
It's going to be hesitantly, very reluctantly, J or and then my second choice.
I just one, but just one. You got J.
Well, let me throw an E1B1B with my second choice. But yeah, no, if I had to, I'm gonna very reluctantly throw it on J.
All right, so I'm gonna say this, like, so if I had to put the rent money on just one of them, I would put it on E1B1B.
That's fine.
And I would do like, so for me, like, so I'm saying that based upon some studies I've looked at, but so you have people who are in the lineage of the Cohens that have it, people in the lineage of the Saids that have it, or the lineage of the Prophet, and also people who are in the Druze population who have it, who say they descend from Jethro or whatnot. So you would have
and the Samaritans, right? The Samaritan Cohen apparently have a lot of E1B1B.
You got it.
Yeah, so, it's funny that neither of us are betting on R, though. You know,
no.
So it takes us back to that whole point about how we take these results ties right back in with how we define Israelite. And therefore, that's why I always try to ask people, you know, when they say, oh, look at this piece of evidence, look at this. The question is, well, how do you define Israelite in order for me to interpret this, you know? Like, so again, like Dante, E1B1B, fine. You know, it seems like the chances are high for him. But someone like me with R, if we're going strictly paternal, all this Ethiopian Jewish stuff is Natufian. It's all like irrelevant, you know? Potentially anyway, you know?
Potentially, yeah. But we all come from somewhere, right?
Oh, agreed, of course.
And so
Abu, come to the microphone, Abu.
Yes, sir. Good and good morning to everybody.
Good morning, sir. What are you doing here? What are your thoughts? I sent you the link.
Hey, somebody sent me the link.
I'm a troublemaker. What are your thoughts?
See, I'm afraid that the thoughts that I had when you sent me the link, we've moved past them. But I was in the chat when you sent me the link, and I was asking questions about definitions. I think a lot of these points that are being brought up do beg questions about definitions. Like also when people talk about natural branches and wild branches and try to apply it to a modern setting, it sort of begs a question of our definition of Israelite, because we're understanding a natural branch to be an ethnic Israelite, if I'm not mistaken. And it begs the question, are we using that in the sense of a strictly patrilineal concept of Israelite, or is it a multilineal concept of Israelite where any line of lineage going back to Jacob is sufficient, or is it something else? You know, I think these questions are also important if we're going to even attempt to say, well, this person's a natural branch and this modern person isn't, you know? Those are some preliminary questions I had.
Y'all keep talking. They calling me right now. I said I was gonna go to Home Depot, mess around with y'all folk right here. Y'all keep talking. You want to answer that? Dante, who else is in here? Pastor Johnson?
No, I don't have nothing to say to Abu. I don't respect Abu at all, and here's why. Abu says it's not about the nationality and all that for him, and yet he was on with Orthodox Moor the other day discussing my personal DNA, and yet he says it's not about the nationality claim.
Orthodox Moor is in here. They were talking about you the other day on what channel?
I think I spoke about Dante very respectfully. I don't think I disrespected during Orthodox
Moor.
My
thing is, you said you're not interested in the DNA at all, but my other thing is, you said that me being E1B gives me a good possibility of being Israel, right?
Yeah, I stand by that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Descending paternally from Jacob.
Wait, why didn't you call out faithful to God when he said that I have no chance of being Israel because I'm E1B1B?
I didn't know he said that. If he said that, then anyone who says that is mistaken. I'll say that now. I didn't know he said that. Let's say this.
All right, he publicly. All right, go ahead.
But wait, so to be fair, I did. So Dante at least acknowledges that I said that with him being E1B1B, he has a decent probability of descending paternally from Jacob, you know, and also being part of like an east to west migration across Africa. Well, how is that disrespectful, though? I said it without you calling me out. And I think it was respectful.
A lot of the stuff you've done, not just that specific thing, but you saying it's not about DNA, and then you discuss DNA. You say there's no language on the pews, and yet you're not calling out anybody saying that it's Arabic on the pews. See, to me, there's a lot of double talk happening.
No, but that's okay that he's in the community, that you can bring this up as he's someone that's involved in the community. It's fine that you bring that up, that he can address it now with some public stuff that need to be aired out respectfully. Go ahead.
If I could say one thing about the nationality thing, ultimately it doesn't matter to me in the sense of lineage. Lineage is irrelevant to me because of the definition that I hold to. Like I hold to a very ecclesiastical definition of Israelite, similar to Israel. So I don't care about people's lineage. That's why I don't fight with people about their lineage claims. Like I'm
How
never going
did
to tell
DNA?
anyone.
How did DNA thing came up?
Yeah. So, but the thing is, I do have an interest in discussing methodology and asking clarifying questions. But I've never gone out and tried to tell someone they don't descend from who they claim to descend or anything like that.
Hello.
Ultimately, it's irrelevant to me. But I do like to discuss sometimes the methodology. I'm more interested in language. But every now and then, I do like to delve into these other subjects, at least to try to clarify.
You got the roof straight now?
Brother Boo, shout out to you. I never met you.
What's the difference? Because I think somebody said you said something about Dante's results when he pulled it up. Did you speak on that and him being connected? Talk about that a little bit.
I did. And as you like to say, shout out to Dante. I did bring up Dante when I was talking on Orthodox Moor's channel. And while Dante was apparently a fan,
oh, you breaking up a little bit.
In the midst of discussions about haplogroups, right? We were just exploring, for example, what haplogroup you think might be the haplogroup of Jacob, because this takes us back to the question of definitions. A lot of people who attempt to identify Israelites biologically, not everybody, but a lot of people hold to a patrilineal definition of Israelite, where you're an Israelite if you descend paternally from Jacob.
Oh yes, I remember. Yes,
so I don't hold to that, but if people are going to hold to that, it does beg the question, what was Jacob's haplogroup? So as I discussed it with Moore, I said that I reluctantly, while I'm skeptical that we can definitively say either way, I reluctantly lead towards J as most likely, but I also think E1B1B has a decent probability as well. And that's where Dante comes in. Apparently, from what I've heard, and I could be wrong about this, but from what I've heard, Dante's haplogroup is E1B1B. And therefore, I was saying that that raises the stakes in a sense, because I think under those circumstances, it could be said there's a decent probability that Dante descends paternally from Jacob. Of course, I can never prove that, but I'm just saying there's a decent probability there. It certainly can't be ruled out. Like that's what I had said when I was on briefly with Dante the other day. I think it was yesterday. He asked me if my position is that he has no chance whatsoever of descending from Jacob. I would never say that. I think that there's a real possibility there, and of course, but again, that brings us back into the definitions. Different people have different definitions of Israelite, and that's why I think people should be clear about what definition they hold to.
And real quick, I just wanted to ask you something
anytime you say that real quick, that's when Faithful want to come in and jack the conversation. Faithful, you read that screen and answer that screen right there.
Yeah, real quick, just I wanted to say this very briefly to Abu, because it has to do with what he's saying right here. Abu, the fact of the matter is that they seem to misunderstand what our relevant position is regarding this topic. And so you had mentioned E1B1B. So Dante was very upset because he assumed that you were saying that he had no chance, right? But isn't it ironic that he says the exact same opposite for Ashkenazis? He thinks that Ashkenazis have no chance, right? He has a whole blog where he says, I don't believe Ashkenazis or European Jews are the true Israelites. And yet there are Ashkenazis who also have E1B1B in very large numbers. So if he's going to say that Ashkenazis aren't the real Jews, is he rejecting the Ashkenazis with E1B1B? Because it begs the question, what is Dante's methodology in determining who is or isn't an Israelite? Is it morphology, phenotype, hair texture, skin color? Like, how does he go about it? Because he hasn't actually definitively defined how he identifies who is or isn't an Israelite. Is it DNA? Is it paternal? Is it maternal? I mean, how does he go about doing it? We know Orthodox Moor has given a position. Orthodox Moor believes that you can be an Israelite on your father's side, your mother's side, or if you're a convert. He believes converts are also true Jews. But Dante hasn't. Yeah, but Dante hasn't given a position. Yeah, but Dante hasn't given a. All right. But anyways, to Abu's credit, though, like he said, and this is where I'm going to revise my position a little bit. While none of us can definitively say which one is the end all be all haplogroup, I think J1 has a better chance. Not saying that there isn't a case to be made for E1B1B. But certainly J1 has a very strong chance. But again, as Abu said, there's also a decent probability for E1B1B. But when people hear E1B1B, they assume, well, E1B1B is connected to E1B1A. So therefore, if E1B1B is the haplogroup, that means E1B1A must also be the haplogroup of Jacob. No. If Jacob is E1B1B, all his descendants are E1B1B. E1B1A has a different progenitor. E1B1B and E1B1A are brother haplogroups, but they're different progenitors for both. So if Jacob is E1B1B, he's definitively not E1B1A. And if he's not E1B1A, that means there's no connection between Jacob and African Americans who are E1B1A.
I don't know if a lot of us know enough about DNA. I'm looking at some of the comments in here. Faithful, you agent. Shout out to Abu. Abu jumped on the other day. You know, one thing I can say, like it or listen, y'all like it or hate it, Abu gonna come on and he gonna share some things. He said he's not no great theologian, no great scholar, but he'll try to shed some light from his knowledge, and I think he's fair with that. And it's okay. And the more we get of that, the more we're going to need of that.